everyone, thank you for joining me on this live webinar today. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your morning to join me for this session. In case you haven't come across me before, my name is Will. I'm the founder and managing director here at a digital agency called Webbox. I founded Webbox over 17 years ago, and we help our care and health clients with their websites and marketing campaigns. So we work with the likes of Voyage Care, Rosemont Care, BioHit Healthcare, BBI Solutions, and many others to help them improve their digital performance. And what I particularly like is working with organizations to help them overcome challenges. So whether that's increased LLM visibility, whether that's kind of getting better performance out of paid media, whether that's developing a website that actually drives engagement for the organization. I love meeting with organizations and shaping what their requirements are to then deliver a successful project. Now that's enough about me. Just a couple of things before we get going. So we are recording today's session, so I'll share a copy of that with you, hopefully over the next couple of days. Also, I want this to be relatively interactive. So as we're going through, if you do have questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll leave some time for questions towards the end. Now, this is a CPD accredited webinar, so if you're currently earning points towards accreditation, then I can give you some information about that towards the end. And as always, we love your feedback on these sessions. So if you've got any feedback or if you want us to cover particular topics, now is actually a really good time to feed that into us because we're currently planning the next quarter of webinars. So today, I'm going to be sharing a little bit more about how care providers can use their website and PPC activity to increase occupancy. And the first thing I want to share is a really simple quote that we use here at Webbox. Your website isn't a brochure, it is your digital front door. Now, most care organizations do treat their website like an information leaflet online, but that mindset is costing you growth. In today's world, your website is usually the first impression that families, residents, professionals, or even funders might get of your organization. It's where that trust is built or even lost long before someone even makes contact. Now, according to a few studies from NHS Digital, Good Things Foundation, and others, over 80% of adults in the UK now look for health or care information online first before any sort of in-person interaction or speaking to a professional. Therefore, your website isn't just about having a digital brochure. It really is about building credibility and starting the conversation early. So I wonder if any of you can relate to some of these questions. You've got a website, but maybe it's not effective. Maybe you're heavily reliant on referrals. You've tried PPC, but it didn't deliver the results. Or maybe you're just not actually sure what's working. And today really is about helping you uncover that. So I'd love you to just kind of get involved in this little quick poll. I'm going to pop that on your screen now. So if you could just cast a vote, and I believe you can select more than one if you feel that more than one is relevant to yourself. So yeah, pop a couple of responses in, and I'll share that with the group shortly. Hopefully we can all relate to some of these scenarios at least, but if not, you can always choose none of the above. Okay, great. Last couple of votes coming in. If you haven't voted, a couple of seconds left to do so. Okay, great. So we've got most of you submitting responses, which is fantastic. So let me just share some of the kind of results with you. So a third of you are saying that you've got a website, but not, very few inquiries are coming through. 2/3 of you are saying that you heavily rely on referrals or word of mouth. 20% of you saying you've tried PPC, but it didn't deliver the results, and 45% saying you're actually just not sure what's working or not on your website. Okay, fantastic. Thank you ever so much for getting involved in that. That's really, really good. Really appreciate you getting involved. This is definitely an area that I think we can help explore today. Now, obviously what we're going to be thinking about today is occupancy and how your digital activity can drive that. And that is because occupancy is one of the most important indicators of how healthy your care organisation is. So it impacts your revenue, your ability to recruit and retain staff, and also expansion plans. But the way families find and choose care has changed significantly over the last couple of years. So they're no longer starting with a brochure or a walk-in, but often starting that journey online. And also worth saying, often at a quite an emotional or time-pressured moment in their life as well. Now, in many cases, your website is the very first impression they get of your organisation. It is, as I said before, your digital front door. Now, at the same time, tools like PPC allow you to appear right at the moment someone is actively searching. So they might be searching things like care home near me or dementia care in this area. And therefore, the opportunity is huge because there's clearly demand at that point. But the reality is, many care providers are not seeing enough inquiries come through their website. And that's exactly what we're going to explore today, and how to turn your website and your PPC into something that actually drives higher occupancy and more paying people as well. So let's move on to the website aspect first, and then we're going to talk about the PPC side later. So first up, I want to share with you 6 essentials of what a high-performing care website needs. And as we go through these 6, you might be able to tick some of them off and say, we're already doing that. Or there might be ones that you're doing, but maybe you could be doing a little bit better or differently. So let's go through these 6 together. So the first up is having really clear user journeys on your website. Now, hopefully we're doing this already, but I'm sure this is one of these points that could be improved on all of our sites. Now, we're really clear that your website will serve multiple audiences. You'll have residents or patients, you'll have families, carers, professionals, even job seekers, and each need a clear path from landing on your website to finding relevant information. So it's really important that we understand the audiences that the website serves and the information that they're looking for, and then hopefully join the dots. How can we get that person through to relevant content in as few clicks as possible? Now, this is an exercise that can be done through a number of workshops internally or with an external agency, where you can start to think about the sitemap of your website and the structure of content and how you group content together so that people can find it really easily. But it's an important exercise to do, because actually if people land on a website and they can't find the information they're looking for, they're probably not going to hang around too long, and you've probably lost that inquiry. So really important to get these things right. Now, moving into a second essential is having a really good kind of search or find a care home facility on your website. Now, for some on today's call, it might well be that find a care home is relevant. For others, it might just be more of a general search or find a location. Look, the terminology will change for everyone on today's call, but you hopefully get the gist of what I'm talking about here. Now, this is a simple but powerful feature for any care provider to allow people to find a kind of a location that's near to them, but also that is offering relevant care and support. So it offers visitors the ability to find local places to have this support, but also relevant by type of care. So it's really important that someone can land on the website and very quickly start this search to see if you can actually provide that for them. But important to note that people will be at different stages of the journey. So some people will land on your website knowing exactly what they want. So they know that they need residential care for a family member with dementia, and they want it to be maybe within 10 miles of their home. Okay, now that is someone who knows exactly what they're looking for, and they're coming with a specific request. Now, for those people, you need to make sure that they can actually do that search really quickly. But it's important to understand that not everyone has that level of understanding. They might not have actually put a family member in care before, and therefore it's really important that you allow those people, that kind of segment, to start the journey as well. Now, you might want to allow that segment to maybe just initially start searching by type of care. So they might know that the family member has got dementia, and therefore maybe that's something that they can relate to quite quickly and easily, and then they can start finding out more about the dementia care that you provide. And I'm just using that as an example. So my main point here is allowing people to search and find relevant care options, but allowing them to do that in multiple ways. Because if you only allow it to be done in one way, then you're only serving one segment of your user base. So let's move on to number 3. This is having a fast and mobile first experience. Now, mobile is no longer just a slice of traffic. For many organizations, it's the majority of the website traffic. So designing a website in a mobile first approach means actually starting with the smallest screen size and then scaling up, rather than designing for desktop and then squeezing everything down to mobile. Now, it's important to think about thumb zones as well, and asking yourself, can users reach important information and buttons easily? And that's what this graphic on screen shows, because you can quite quickly see the areas of the screen that you can reach to with a thumb easily. The orange zone is then kind of what might be a bit of a stretch, and the red zone is pretty much a no-go area. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because some of the no-go areas, we often put things like our navigation there. So it actually makes navigating on the site quite difficult, which is why you might have seen a trend more recently of mobile navigations being in the kind of bottom left or bottom right, because it's easier to reach and find that. Now, it's really important that we make sure that the website is mobile first, because this is all about providing a user experience that actually works for the user. And in this instance, the data says that more often than not, the user will be on a mobile, or at least they might start the journey on a mobile before moving maybe to a laptop or desktop. Now, testing is also critical. So if you're, making changes to your existing website or publishing new content, we should always be testing that on mobile as well as desktop. We've seen so many scenarios over the years where, people might test some content on a desktop. They think, yeah, that's great, lovely. They kind of push out this new blog post, and they've never looked at it on a mobile. And, we would all agree it doesn't look great on a mobile. So it's really important that as part of our ongoing testing that we keep mobile in mind. And the final thing I want to mention here is the fact that Google is a mobile first index. So what this means is that your mobile user experience and page speed are a direct ranking factor for how you appear in Google. So if you want to be getting more traffic through Google, then this is actually something you want to double down on, because the faster your website loads and the better the mobile experience, then the higher your rankings will be. Now, moving into number 4, this is around content and how you need to inform and reassure in your written content. Now, we often audit care provider websites, and one thing which always jumps out at us is a lot of industry jargon, buzzwords, acronyms, which only mean something to those internal within the organization and probably mean very little or cause confusion to those who are actually looking for a care provider at the time. So we always encourage our clients to use plain English, avoid kind of this this jargon which doesn't really make sense outside of the sector, because ultimately the people who are looking for care, who are putting maybe a family member into care or making arrangements for them, aren't always going to know some of the jargon or kind of acronyms that you might speak of internally. So also worth thinking about your tone of voice, and we always encourage people to focus on empathy. So when people land on your website, it's probably because there's quite a difficult situation within the family. Maybe someone's looking for support for a loved one. And it's really important that the language we use on these sites reflects that. So we're not kind of talking in sales language and, arrange a call with us here and inquire here. And, we're not talking in that language, but actually we're kind of making sure that any call to actions are soft and empathetic. So why not, drop in and, have a coffee with us, arrange a visit, things like that work a lot better on care websites to move people through the consideration stage. It's also worth thinking about your visual content, so your imagery and your video. This really should reflect the dignity and warmth that you have within your setting, whether that's in a care home, whether that's in someone's own home, whether that's care in another setting. It's still worth thinking about how do we capture that through really good professional photography that portrays without words that you have a really good service, that you treat people with dignity, and that there's a real warmth and sense of community in your service. Now, all of this can come through pictures, images, but it's really important to think about which ones you use on the site, because after all, they say a picture paints 1,000 words. So it's really important to think about the imagery used on your site. Now, number 5 is all around having call to actions on the site. And I've touched on this very briefly, so I just want to delve into this a little bit more. Often on websites, you might see a call to action of, inquire, buy, find out more. And I'm talking generic now, out of the sector. But of course, when it comes to a care provider's website, that just isn't appropriate. But ultimately, you are wanting someone to get in touch and to further the conversation, or at least start a conversation with you. And therefore, you still need to have call to actions on a website. But we always encourage our clients to think of this in 2 stages. So have primary call to actions and secondary call to actions. So a primary call to action in this instance might be to book a visit or to send an inquiry. And that is for someone who has made a decision that potentially your offering is relevant for them and they want to kind of further that conversation. But if you think about this from a marketing funnel perspective, that is someone who's probably quite far down the marketing funnel. They've made their decision, they've probably read lots about you on the website, and they're now saying, right, I'm ready to make the next step. But there's a whole nother segment of people who are just not there yet. And that's where the secondary call to actions come in. Now, the secondary call to action might be things like, download a guide or a helpful document on, how to, apply for funding or something of that ilk, or download our digital brochure, so on and so forth. These are ways that you can still capture someone's email address or phone number, but in a much softer way. And again, referring back to this marketing funnel, they are probably in the middle of the marketing funnel, this kind of consideration stage, where they've found out a little bit more. They think maybe there is good synergy here. Maybe they want to make an inquiry soon, but they're not quite ready. They just want to find out more information. And it's really important that our secondary call to actions are still prominent on our sites so that you can still capture information and support people through their journey. Now, coming to the sixth and final kind of website recommendation is this whole trust factor. Now, honestly, if I sat in front of any of you kind of in person, I'm sure very quickly we'd build up that trust. You would talk to me about your care provision, how long you've been going, some of the activities that you put on, so on and so forth. And very quickly, I would feel like I could trust you as a provider. But doing that digitally is far more difficult because you're not there in person to talk someone through all of this. So, of course, doing this digitally is far more difficult, and therefore you probably need to go over and above on your website to get that trust factor across. So this is like hopefully kind of some of the fundamentals, but we all know that actually if someone doesn't trust the organization or trust what you're offering, then of course they're not going to take anything further. Both families and residents want to feel confident before they even pick up the phone or book a visit. Now, a simple way to do this would be through what I call ultra transparency. So you need to do things like showing your real environment, maybe with a short virtual tour, lots of photography of the setting and so on. You can also do that by making your CQC a kind of a report and rating really clear on the website. Now, I'm conscious that will apply to some on this call and not others, but if that applies to you, or even if a different accreditation applies to you, the point is to make that really clear on the website. Now, you could also combine this with genuine testimonials, so, real experiences from real people. And if you want to go over and above with this, video is the best way to do that. If you've got a video from someone who talks about how they've, transitioned a family member into care and how you made that process really simple, that is gold dust in comparison to just a written testimonial. Now, of course, written testimonials are also important, but if we're talking about actually leading the way, then video testimonials are definitely worth exploring. You also want to kind of build up trust by putting your team at front and center of the website. Ultimately, I've always, believed that people buy people, and therefore putting your team and their expertise at the forefront of what you're offering is going to have a huge impact on whether someone can build up trust digitally before that inquiry is made. So make it really clear, who the manager might be, who the leadership team are, what their experience is, maybe some of the people that might be there day to day, so on and so forth. It's really good to put faces to names and talk a little bit about their experience to build this credibility. And it's all of these small touches that I've just outlined that turn visitors into inquiries, because people can choose a care provider that they feel they can trust. And that really is fundamental in the whole conversion journey. Now, they are 6 essentials that your website should have if you're a care provider. And of course, I could give you 66, but because of time, I'm going to stop there. And I just want to shift our focus now to thinking about how do we then capture and nurture demand using PPC. And just for the sake of clarity, if you haven't come across PPC before, this stands for pay per click. It often relates to a platform called Google Ads, where you can run adverts at the top of Google. And that would look something like this. So on the left of the screen here, this is me just doing a search for care near me, and you can see at the top then there's a few adverts. Now, normally there's 3 or 4 adverts at the top of the page with more towards the bottom. And as we probably all know by now, that has been growing over time. So actually, there's a lot of space on Google's page now for running ads. Now, one of the great things is this can drive you instant visibility. So if you push the button today, then by this afternoon, in theory, your ad could be showing there at the top of Google. So it is a great way to boost traffic to your site that is actively looking for your care provision. And that's really what I want to touch on today is capturing existing demand. Because at the moment, if you're not using PPC, what people might do is they might go to Google, they might do a search, and they'll find other people's adverts. Underneath that, they might see AI overviews. Underneath that, maybe map listings. Underneath that, organic listings, so on and so forth. So the chance of them finding you becomes slimmer and slimmer because actually they're having to scroll so far down a search engine results page that actually you're getting a very, very small slice of the cake. Whereas if you're running PPC, then you've got an advert at the top of the page, which is only appearing when someone is searching for a relevant keyword. And then you can put lots of things in place to make sure that you're targeting these ads at the right people. Now, today's talk is not going to delve into that, but I'm very happy to delve into the detail of that another time. If you want to do that kind of on a one-to-one call, I'm happy to do that. But today's call is really about surface level. How does this work in principle? So you're capturing demand of people who are actively searching for care provision, and your advert then appears and they can then go through to your website. And at that point, then we can track whether they call you, whether they drop you an email, maybe they download a document, so on and so forth. We can track what they do so that we can say what your return on investment might be. So you've spent X on Google Ads, which has returned Y in terms of inquiries, calls, and so on. And then through your CRM, you can then track how many of those went on to actually take the conversation further. So it's a really transparent way of marketing your business online, but doing it in a really sensitive way. Now, this is we always encourage, this is an always on strategy. So you can have adverts showing day in, day out, and always be capturing this demand. But also you might want to do this on an ad hoc basis. So if you've got availability in one particular location and you're looking to fill that, then you could spin up a short-term campaign, maybe run that for a month or two, just to drive some inquiries in to then get occupancy back up to a high percentage. Now, the great thing with PPC is that it isn't set and forget. Okay, PPC is very much an iterative process. So you learn from the data. We learn who converts, who doesn't, what message is resonating, and so on, so that the campaigns deliver better performance over time. So this is definitely something I'd encourage you to look at if you haven't already. And for those who maybe said in the poll at the start they've tried it but with limited success, I'd really kind of say it's worth exploring this again. We run a lot of campaigns within the industry where we are delivering tangible results. So we know it's possible. So often, where it kind of falls down might be because you haven't got maybe the strategy in place or the campaign hasn't been set up correctly or so on and so forth. So it's not to discount PPC. It's maybe to look at it objectively and say, how could we rerun a PPC campaign and this time do it differently? So if that's the kind of camp you sit in, I'll talk a little bit about our audit at the end. Now, this is a little bit on capturing demand. I now want to move on to nurturing demand, because we all know that what we're talking about here is a really highly considered decision. If I put myself in the shoes of a family member who is going to maybe put one of my parents into care, I'm not going to make that decision lightly. I'm not going to just do a quick Google search one afternoon, find a website, bang in an inquiry, and then, tomorrow, ask mum to go and move in. That just doesn't happen, right? Unless there's an emergency situation, that is not the reality of what's happening here. And therefore, as a family member, I'm taking a considered decision here. I may be doing some research, I'm finding out about my options. I might then be talking to my brother and two sisters about, kind of what we should be doing about kind of mum and dad's health and kind of care provision. So all of this takes time. And therefore, what's important is that you have things in place to nurture that demand. What does this mean in real terms? Well, what it means is I might land on your website today and I might be downloading a document or finding out a little bit more, and then I might leave your website. I haven't sent an inquiry. All I've done maybe is download a document. Now, at that point, what's really important is that I have some time to speak with maybe family members, but that also you remind me that I've been on your site. That this is a process called retargeting, where you kind of continue to show me little messages and adverts across different platforms to just remind me that I was on that website and I could find out a little bit more. Because what's important is that we keep your organization's name top of my mind so that when I'm ready to make that decision, I just come straight back to you. Okay, so that is really important that we nurture the demand. Now, you can do that in Google Ads, but you can probably do it more effectively across other channels. So Facebook, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, all of these social channels allow you to do retargeting. And the great thing is you can just do that in a really empathetic, non-salesy way. But let me paint a picture. I could have downloaded a document from your website this afternoon, and then this evening I could be scrolling down Facebook whilst watching some TV, and I could then have an advert shown from your organization. Just keeps that organization name top of my mind to make sure that we're nurturing that demand until I'm ready to make that final step. So it's really important that we look at this in two halves. Up front, you have to capture the demand. So when people are searching in Google, you've got to be there, right? It's really important that you've got a place at the table. But once you've had someone land on the website, that isn't the end of the journey. And actually nurturing them is as important as capturing them in the first place. Now, all of this can be really clearly reported. For any business, right, small or large, you'll want to track the effectiveness of a campaign like this. Now, when you're doing other processes, you might be doing some posts on social media, just organically. You might be doing some emails to an email database, or you might be doing some search engine optimization, lots of other things you could be doing. But I would argue that a lot of those have some kind of some black holes. So you might be doing SEO activity, and when an inquiry comes in, you might not be able to definitively say the inquiry came from SEO. It might have, but it might not have, and there's a bit of a grey area. I think the great thing about PPC is that you can be really black and white about how much you're spending on it and what it is driving in for the organization. So you might have spent X and it has returned Y, and that is where the value is because you can report back to the business effectively on how many referrals, inquiries, visits, document downloads, and many other events, how many of those have happened as a result of this campaign. And we then normally put that into a live dashboard using a platform called Google Looker Studio. And this is something then that you can share with the internal team so that they can see in real time how this campaign is performing. So finally, I would just say, once you're gathering that data, This is really where the magic happens, is what do we then change and pivot based on the data that we're gathering? So are we finding that we're generating more inquiries in a particular location over another? Are we finding that we're driving more phone calls rather than booked visits? So on and so forth. And then we start to go, right, well, off the back of this data, now that we know this, what are we going to change as a result? So it's a great way to start to increase occupancy off the back of what we've talked about when it comes to improving engagement on your website. Now, as I come into land, I just want to share the key takeaways with you. So first up, your website is not a digital brochure. It is your number one marketing asset. So every campaign and conversation will come back to this. They probably saw your website first. Second up is PPC, right? It drives more visibility and qualified opportunities, but you've got to be in it to win it, as they say. So it's really important that we're there to capture the demand, but we're also there to nurture that demand. And then finally, all of these things, whether it's your website or whether it's any sort of marketing campaign that you're running, should be measured and refined to get better digital performance over time. Okay, so all of these things are iterative. We should never think that we've got a website in place and it doesn't change, or we've done a marketing campaign and we've ticked that box. All of these things should be ongoing and continually improved to get the best results. And that's really what we do at Webbox, is we help care providers and health organizations deliver conversion-focused websites and digital marketing. And we've done this for a lot of clients over the last 17 years. And one of our latest case studies that I can share with you will talk about how we've specifically increased qualified opportunities for one care provider by 31%. Now, if you want to understand a little bit more about how Webbox could help you do the same, whether you want better performance from your website or any sort of digital marketing activity that you're doing, then I'd really encourage you to apply for one of our digital audits. We're now setting aside 5 of these slots each month. So if you want us to audit your current website or marketing campaigns, and do that manually, by the way, so this is not some automated system or AI. This is actually one of our expert team going through your website or marketing campaign to uncover things that are maybe blocking growth. And then we share that with you on a playback call. If that would be helpful to you, then you can use this QR code and request one today. And I'll also follow up with an email to share that link with you. Now, finally, I'd love you to join some of our other webinars that are coming up. So we've got one on the 22nd of April about how to communicate the value of marketing internally. And this is, relevant for all organizations at the moment, especially in the current climate. So if you can join me for that, I'd love to have you on that session. But we are in the process of organizing our next series of webinars. So please follow us on Eventbrite so that you get notified of those as and when they are announced. So that's everything from me. I'm going to move into a time of questions. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to pop it into the chat or the Q&A. I'd be really happy to answer those. I'm going to just flick open the chat and Q&A because there might be some stuff there already. So yeah, please get involved. If you have got a question, I'm very happy to answer it live. If I can't, I can always come back to you via email afterwards. So it'd be great to hear from you. I'm opening up my chat. I've got one that's been sent to me direct. So let me just read this out. So we've got a website at the moment and we're running PPC campaigns using Google Ads. You talked a little bit about improving performance over time. How is this done in practice? Okay, so that's a good question. So yes, you might be running Google Ads at the moment, and you need to learn from that data in order to improve, which sounds really simple, but of course that's the kind of complex part that we help our clients with. So what we're doing is understanding, what actions they take on the website. How can we, get them to engage with us in other ways? Is there demographic data involved? So kind of a female is more likely to engage with us than males. Is there a particular age group which converts better? Is there locations of the UK which are working out better for us? So on and so forth. There's lots of things which go into that, but one key aspect which I would say really moves the needle is when you're tracking an inquiry all the way through into your CRM, and then if you can actually determine whether that person went on to use any services, then we can start to feed that data back into Google Ads. And that's, I think, where you really move the needle, because Google Ads as a platform then, over time, learns more about the type of person who goes from inquiry through to actually use services. And I think at that point then we're starting to get much more focused on who we should be showing ads to, because actually then we've got more data on who is converting and who isn't right at the bottom of the funnel. Okay, so that would just be my one little tip there. Okay, great. So let's have a look at the chat. So I've got another question here. Quick question, what's the approximate cost per qualified lead for the care industry? I know it depends on many factors, but just want to know from your experience. Really good question, because as you say, it does vary. One of the things that I think has a huge impact is whether you're a local care provider or whether you kind of have locations all around the UK. And I think the reason that can have a huge impact is because if you have potentially hundreds of service locations all over the UK, all offering different levels of expertise or services, it's going to be probably a lower cost per inquiry or cost per qualified lead, because we're able to capture more of the market and basically move leads around different locations and so on. What we're finding at the moment is it might fluctuate anywhere from £20 to £60, which I appreciate is broad, but it gives you a bit of a ballpark. But there are so many factors to this. So what I'd love to do maybe is deep dive with you to specifically think about your setting and what the potential size of the market, as we call it, could be. And then I could be a little bit more specific in your instance. So yeah, great question. Thank you. Okay, lovely. If there's any more questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat or the Q&A. I'll just keep a little eye open if there's any more, just for a couple more seconds, just before we wrap up. Whilst I do that, if anyone is doing any kind of CPD at the moment and wants to just get evidence of you being on this session today, you can just scan this QR code and you can evidence it that way. Okay, great. Well, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone that's joined the session this morning. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to this content. I will follow up shortly with a copy of the recording, and if we can help in any way, or if you'd like us to do one of our complimentary digital audits, you know where we are, please get in touch. But for now, thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.